Hey, how's it going? It's Tuimaleali'ifano. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a digital garden for free using Jekyll, a theme called Chirpy, and finally hosting it on GitHub Pages, all so that you can have a centralized place to store your documentation. So this is the Jekyll theme that we're going to be using to build our site today. It's called Chirpy. What I love about this design is that it's super minimalistic, and if we jump into a post just to give you a quick demo of what your content will look like, you'll see here that it's got a very nice minimal design. Also on the top right here, you'll have your table of contents, and you can see that it's expanding and collapsing dynamically as we scroll through the page, which is really cool. I also love the code blocks and how they've designed it here. It kind of looks like a terminal window, and you'll have your code here. You can sort of highlight and copy this way, or you also have a button here where you can copy directly to your clipboard. If you have images on your site like this one, for example, you have the ability to zoom in by clicking on it and viewing documentation this way. This is very helpful for when you're trying to view architectural diagrams, and simply click again to minimize it. So to access the categories, you have the category section here from the nav bar, and as you can see, it's organized it very nicely for us. You also can see the different types of tags, so this can add extra metadata to your documentation, and as you write more documentation, it's just going to grow, and it gives you the ability to find your documentation quicker. Archives here is a very nice timeline of your post history, which is pretty cool. So that's the thing we're going to be using today. So without further ado, let's jump into how we can set this up for our own digital garden. Before we get started, one thing the documentation doesn't cover very well is how to customize the nav bar. So in case you want to change something like categories to blog or docs, I'm going to show you exactly how to customize it at the end of this video. So make sure to watch right to the end if you want to customize the nav bar. Alright, so I'm going to be using the getting started documentation here from the official Chirpy documentation. And you can see here that we're going to need to install some prerequisites, mainly Jekyll. Now I've already got Jekyll installed on my system, but if you don't have it on yours, feel free to navigate to the Jekyll docs here and install it for your system, whether it be macOS, Ubuntu, or Windows. Alright, so now that you have your prerequisites installed, it's time for us to create our site. So there are two ways to create the sites. Today we're going to be using the Chirpy starter, which gives us an easy way to install and upgrade our sites. But if you are a seasoned developer, you can use the GitHub repository by forking it directly, and it will give you more flexibility on how to customize some of the pages and layouts. Alright, so we're going to go here to the Chirpy starter, and it should be a repo that we'll need to clone. So we're going to go here, it'll take us to the GitHub repo. On the top right, you can see the use this template. We're going to click on that and click on create new repository. All right, cool. So we're going to give our repository a name. So if you're going to use this to host your main GitHub page, I suggest you put in your username .github.io, and this will make it available on this address. But if you want to host it on something like Chirpy, for example, you can also name it Chirpy, but keep in mind that this will mean that it would be accessible on geraldtui.github.io/Chirpy if you're going to call the repository Chirpy. So for now, because this is going to be my main page, I'm just going to use geraldtui.github.io. That's cool. It looks like it's available. Make sure that it is set to public and create repository. Right, now that we have our own copy of the Chirpy theme, let's go ahead and clone this to our local machine so that we can make some changes. To do that, we're going to come up here where it says code, and I'm going to use the SSH, so I'm going to copy this to my clipboard. If you don't have SSH set up, you can use the HTTP option, and that's simply going to ask you to log in when you're cloning it using the terminal. So let's jump back into a terminal, and in the repos directory here, I'm going to run git clone and then paste the SSH link here. And all this is doing is going to copy down all the files that we need. And if I do an ls, you can see here that's the repo that we've cloned. Let's jump into there, and I'm going to use VS Code. So the shortcut to open VS Code in this project is code space period. Alright, so before we make any changes to our sites, the first thing we need to do is install the Jekyll dependencies. To do that, we want to open up a terminal. So you can do that in two ways. You can come up here and select new terminal, or you can use a shortcut which is Control and tilde, which will do the same thing. So now that we've got the integrated terminal up, we want to run bundle, and this command is just going to install all the dependencies that Jekyll needs and get things ready for us. Should be pretty quick, and as you can see, it's done just that. It's installed everything that we need for Jekyll. Before we start customizing our sites, I want to just jump back into our GitHub repository, and I want to show you something really cool. If you navigate down here to the bottom right, you'll see here that it's gone ahead and done a deployment for us. Now we haven't even made any changes to this. So if we click on this just to check out what it's doing, you can see that it's made the site available on geraldtui.github.io. And if we click on this, you'll see here that it's actually hosting and running this Chirpy theme right now on GitHub Pages. And of course, there's no content here, but this is out of the box. Everything's good to go. All we have to do now is customize it to what we like. Pretty cool, right? Back to our Visual Studio Code. And the first thing that we want to do is go over to this _config.yaml. And in here, this is where we're going to set the site settings that we're going to be using for today and customizing our page. So there are a bunch of settings in here, but we won't change all of them. We'll just change a few just to give you an example of what you can update. So here we've got time zone, which I'm going to set to Pacific Auckland. The title here, Chirpy, is going to be changed to Digital Garden. And this is going to be the title that you'll see on the top left. The tagline here is going to be YouTube demo. I'm going to keep description as is. URL, we're going to use the URL of our site. In my case, it's going to be https://geraldtui.github.io. You can update this to what your site is going to be. I'm going to give my GitHub username here, Gerald Tui. I don't have Twitter, so I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to put my full name here, Jekyll Tuimaleali'ifano. I'm going to comment our email for now, which is okay. And again, I don't have Twitter. I'll leave GitHub there. So update this to Jekyll Tui, and we'll scroll through the rest of this. Again, there are a bunch of settings here that we'll just leave alone, like Google Site Verification, Google Analytics, etc. You also have the ability to set your default theme. So if you want light theme to be your default, you can set that here as well. All right, so we get down here to the avatar. So this is where you're going to set the profile picture that's going to appear on the top left of your site. Now you have the ability to just paste in a local file here, or you can also point it to a cloud hosted picture as well. So we're going to do that, and we're actually going to use the GitHub profile picture that I've got already. Let's navigate over to my GitHub. I'm going to right click, open image in new tab, and this should give us the URL. And I'm just going to copy the URL here, jump back into our Visual Studio Code and paste. And I think we're good. All right, let's go ahead and save that. Now, in order for you to run this site locally, you're gonna open up your terminal, and what you're gonna be running is bundle exec Jekyll s. And once that's up, you can see here it's available on localhost port 4000. We're gonna go ahead and click on that. And you see here right away that it's updated our details for us. It's used the profile picture here from GitHub, Digital Garden as our title, and YouTube demo for our tagline. Okay, so far so good. Let's go ahead and create our first post. Now Jekyll is expecting all posts to be in markdown files, and it's expecting it to be in this directory here, _posts. So let's go ahead and right click _post and create a new file. Now the formatting for the name is also very specific. The format is gonna be 2024, which is the year, month, and day, followed by whatever you want to call this file. So for me, I'm going to call this hello world.md for markdown. Now that we've got our file, I'm going to paste in some contents that I prepared earlier and walk you through what each section means. Okay, so as you can see here at the very beginning of our post, we're going to have this thing called the front matter. And all this are properties that Jekyll will use to render our page onto the site. Now, the front matter is going to begin with triple hyphen and end with triple hyphen. And in between are going to be the properties that we're going to pass on. So at the very beginning here, we've got layout set to post, because this is going to be a post. The title we've set to hello world. The date is going to be 1st of Jan 2024. Keep in mind this format for the date is different to the format that we needed for the file name. The categories, I've given it documentation, and for tags I've given it like, comment, and subscribe. And the rest of the documentation is going to be in Markdown syntax. Now, if you're not familiar with Markdown, I'm going to leave links in the description below so you can see things like the cheat sheets and the cheat codes so that you can see the different types of syntax that you can write with Markdown. In this example here, I've got a couple headings. A heading in Markdown is a hash followed by the heading that you want. And in this case, heading 1 is going to be thanks for watching. Paragraphs are going to be written just like this with no extra syntax. And we've got here, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you find any value in these videos. Here is an example of heading 2, and right here is an example of a code block. This code block here is going to be console type, so the code is a kind of bash type code. You write code blocks with triple backticks and end with triple backticks. Right, so I've just explained all that really quickly, but it's really hard to visualize Markdown when you're writing it like this. Now the cool thing about using VS Code is you can actually preview what your Markdown would look like. If you navigate up here to the top right, you'll see here a button called Open Preview to the side. If you click on this, this will actually bring up a preview of what your code will look like once it's rendered onto the site. Pretty cool. Okay, once we save this file and open up the integrated terminal again, you can see here that as we were working through the file, Chirpy, or rather Jekyll, has gone ahead and regenerated some of these files for our sites, which means that if we navigate back into our localhost on our browser, once we do a refresh, we can see our post is now live on our local site. You can see here the title is Hello World. It's given us a quick preview of the content of the post itself. It's got the date that we set, and also it's tagged it, or rather it's got the category documentation. So clicking here so we can check it out. Again, we've got the title here, and it's posted on the date that we specified, as well as it's given myself as the author of this particular post. And this is what it looks like once our markdown has been rendered on the site. So again, thanks for watching, and everything else that we've got in here. And the code block you can see here is what the Chirpy theme has done for us, and I really like this minimalistic design. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see the tags as well, like, comment, and subscribe. And if we navigate over to the category section from the nav bar, you can see it's created a new documentation category for us. And in the tags, it's got all the tags that we've given in the post. So all of this is running locally, and the next step for us to do is push our code changes up to our GitHub repository so that our GitHub pages is updated and publicly made available. But before we do that, I did promise you that I'll show you how to customize the nav bar. So let's go ahead and see how to do that now. So the categories here has the default labels, but if I wanted to change categories to something like blog or archives to something like timeline, then this is how you update the labels. So we want to go back into the Chirpy documentation sites. In the bottom left here, we're going to go and access their GitHub repository. In here, you're going to look for Jekyll theme Chirpy. We'll click into that. And we want to navigate and find a folder called _data. This one right here. Inside _data, we're looking for locales, and if we expand this, you'll be able to see all the different locale files in here, and depending on which region and what language you're using, feel free to pick the one that's appropriate for you. I'm going to be using English, so en.yaml is the one I'm looking for, and up here to the top right, and we're going to copy raw file. So most of these changes we won't need, but we're going to copy the entire file anyway, just in case for future use. And back into our VS Code, we're going to navigate up to _data. I'm going to right click, create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder locales. In this folder, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to name it en.yaml to reflect the locale that we want. And I'm going to paste in the contents from that raw data and save this. All right, so now that we've got the file here copied over, essentially, what we're really interested in is this tab section. So there's a bunch of properties here that you can ignore, but if you want to customize the labels on a nav bar, you find this section here called tabs. And you can see here that home is being labeled home, categories, etc. Now, in order for us to change the label, we simply come up here to the value of categories. And instead of categories, let's do something like blog. And instead of archives, let's do something like timeline. So you can see here, as we're making those changes, Jekyll is trying to reload and regenerate the content. But I believe because this is a config change rather than a page change, we have to reload the Jekyll localhost server manually. So to do that, I'm going to do Control-C to cancel out. I'm going to do clear, and I'm just going to press the up arrow until I find the command to execute the localhost again, which is bundle exec Jekyll S. So once I execute that, it's going to go ahead and reload our page, jump back into our localhost page. And once we refresh, you can see here on the left side where our navbar is, the labels have been updated from categories to blog and from archives to timeline. And that's it. That's how you customize the navbar. So now that we have our post ready and we've customized our navbar and customized the site essentially, we want to be able to push these changes to our Git repository so that we can make it publicly available on our GitHub pages. To do that, we're going to need to jump back into our VS Code. We're going to open a new terminal, so you can click on this plus icon here, and it should just create a new tab terminal for us. The first thing we need to do is run a git command to add all our changes and stage all our changes. So we're going to do git add dot to add everything, and then I'm going to do git commit -m to give it a message, and I'm just going to put in a message of first post, enter. And here you can see that it has staged the changes, and it's also committed the changes as well. That's committed it to our local git, but I'm just going to do clear here and do a git push, and this is going to push our changes to our GitHub repository. Right, looks like that's all been pushed. If we go back into our GitHub repo just to check out the changes, now we're back here into the repository. We'll navigate down here. If we do a refresh here, we should see now instead of one commit, there will be 2 commits, which is the one that we just committed. And here you can see in the deployment section, it's currently going through a deployment right now. So let's try access that and try catch it and see what it's doing. So here you can see that the initial commits was when we cloned the repository, and right here when we created a push or updated the code, it's gone ahead and recognized there's code changes, and that means we have to redeploy our GitHub Pages sites. Once this is done, our changes should be available on our GitHub Pages. If we click on our site now, which is jerotui.github.io, we should be able to see our changes here. You can see here Safari is just saying that there's a new version of content available. I'll go ahead and click updates, or we simply could have refreshed. And here we go. This is the changes that we made locally and then we pushed to our GitHub repository. And now it's publicly accessible by everyone on the internet at jerotui.github.io. And just like that, we've created a digital garden using Jekyll, a theme called Chirpy, and hosting it on GitHub Pages. Now, there are a couple things I haven't covered in this video, but I'll link them in the description below. Things like markdown cheat sheets, as well as useful VS Code extensions. But if you found any value in this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more future videos. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.